purpose to, quote, teach democracy.
And
So
also,
it was the United States coup that people have no idea about.
and
you mentioned
the Maiden coup in 214. Absolutely.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the deal with Gorbachev and was with that quote,
Jim Baker did it.
Yeah, NATO would not move, quote, 1 inch further, right. And there was 16. Now there were 30. And in reading your article, and I read the whole article and underlined what I thought are salient points. You know, the bottom line, the reason why they're saying that it's not credible is because it's an anonymous source. And in the beginning, you said that they all use anonymous sources, but when they use an anonymous source, it's legit. No, but when you put out this information in detail, it's discouraged. It's not accurate.
I'll tell you what I consider when I worked for the time, I really had sources. Now I think the anonymous sources are a press secretary for the president or one of the cabinet members who whispers to them, and after a briefing, we'll give you a better feel. When I got to New York Times, I went to New York Times in '72. I actually, because the Times then was a straight paper. It was good on the war from Vietnam. David Halberstam, those names, Neil Sheehan, a guy named Homer Biggert, wonderful reporting. But in Washington, the Times was always president focused a little bit, much more. And so I did the My Lai stuff, and I couldn't get hired by a newspaper because I've been an AP. I've been an AP Associated Press correspondent. I covered the war from the Pentagon for a couple of years, which is I learned how to hate the Vietnam War from officers who told me what was going on and GIs. In any case, so I couldn't get a job even after I went, and let me tell you something about my country. This isn't about not liking America. Oh. My parents were immigrants. They came to this country not knowing English. My father had by the time I was 6 or 7, my father was running a small laundry and cleaning store in the ghetto, in the black ghetto in Chicago. And from the age of 13 on, I worked there. He got cancer at 15 and died a very bad death 2 years later. But I took over running the store, and I learned a couple of things from that. I was always like sports, and on Sundays, when in Chicago in the 50s, early 50s, when this happened, I was born in 37, so this would have been 52, 53. On Sundays, every other Sunday, the White Sox left Comiskey Park and played their games in other stadiums. And every other Sunday, the Negro League played. This is right after World War II. And when I was working for my dad, and there were a couple of guys who worked for my dad, pressing pants for 12 cents a pair. And they take me to ball games on Sunday because, I always played ball. The best ball I played was in the Army, actually. But anyway, so I got to know that because my skin was different, I was going to have a better life than they did. I mean, they knew it too. I learned that when I was 14, 15. So I was always sensitive. And you have to understand, when you have a war against a minority, like we did in Vietnam, and not in the Ukraine, not against Russia, but when we had wars like we did, in the famous war in Grenada, it's racial. It turns out to be racial for the kids doing it, because that's the only way they can cope. It's just anyway. And so I grew up and I worked part-time, and when I graduate, I got a ride to school. University of Chicago. Was a smart kid, and we sold everything. My mother finally moved to California. I have a brother too who took care of her. I had her for 4 years, and then my brother had her. I had to take care of my mom. I had older sisters who were married and split as soon as they could, and so I came up not from the Harvard Crimson or the Yale Daily News. I come up from a kid from nowhere. If you remember John R. Tunis, his wonderful books, The Kid from Tompkinsville, about a kid who played center field as a 19-year-old rookie for the Dodgers. Anyway, I came up, and in '69, I'm sticking 2 fingers in the eye of a president, Nixon, newly elected, right in his eye. And am I in the gulag for it? No. I'm fame, fortune, and glory. I won every prize, Pulitzer Prize, all this stuff. And so I'm not knocking America. I'm just knocking these guys' version of America, because that's not the right America.
Oh, and look, I agree
Yeah,
with
why hasn't anybody in your office sent me that article? When you're done, have somebody send me an email and I'll give you my just make a PDF of those pages. I want to read that stuff.
Yeah.
I knew who he was, the guy who wrote it.
Look at just to show you some of the articles we've been writing in the magazine. This is the cover. We sent it to you. That's after your article came out. You know, who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline? We will bring an end to it. I promise you. We quoted Biden back in September. These are just some of the articles, one after another. We've been writing.
It's so interesting you say that because nobody's asked that question yet of the president in a news conference. And 4 days, it blew up on the 26th. And I think look, I'm not in Joe's mind. And
well, if you're not in Joe's mind, you'd be out of your mind if you were in Joe's mind.
I just mean by that, I don't know. I know what his deputies do. I know what Blinken and Newland and Sullivan know. They applauded the overthrow of the government and the May overthrow in 2014. They orchestrated it. We know all that.
Yep.
And we know they're dead set. And we had a Secretary of State, Blinken, go to China after delaying because of a balloon. He delayed visiting China because of a balloon. An F-22 shut it down.
Yeah, I know. We wrote about it. Yep. It's like $400 million or something to do.
And you know what the pilot did?
There you go. There's the cover.
Oh, yeah.
Up goes the weasel.
You guys are wild, man.
Yeah.
So who reads you? What's your circulation?
Oh, no, we have it. It's an international magazine. At one time, I used to be on Oprah, The Today Show, Good Morning America. I used to be on everybody. And I have best-selling books, Trends 2000, Trend Tracking. And I did know that. I didn't know that. Yeah, they blacklisted me when I said what would happen with the Afghan war. And you said you're from the South, South Chicago. By the way, I lived in Chicago for 7 years.
Where? Depends on where, buddy.
Well, I was up in Evanston, but I worked in the city.
Come on.
All right. I'm just saying. But I'm a Napolitano that grew up in the Bronx.
I grew up on 47th Street in the South Side.
Yeah, it's a whole different trip.
Public school. We played against the Catholic school 2 blocks away. We played on every sport against them, and it was always bloody. I'm talking about we played touch football, tackle football with no equipment. And we played basketball with elbows in the mouth every time you went up. And it was really, Chicago's very gritty. It's a great, and by the way, Chicago's become, I hate to say it, Daley started it. I mean, it's become an amazing city. And it's got all these racial problems, but at least they look at them. And it's got that lakefront that they did a spectacular job on. But, but they're losing it on the shooting stuff, aren't they?
Yeah. But anyway, so when you talk about how you grew up, I grew up in the Bronx. We social climbed to Yonkers later on.
Oh, that's a big jump, man.
But so I understand what you say because we didn't, our daddies, like these other guys, we're not born on third base, and so we have a different passion of life because we're fighters and we had to fight our way up to get where we are. As I say, it's Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks. As George Carlin said, it's one big club and you ain't in it. And that's the club in control. So when you say this isn't about not liking America, it's about our loss of the America that we used to love so much.
Well, it's there. It's still there. But it's funny you mentioned George Carlin because he should be required viewing. Although he offends a lot of people. He does a thing on the church that doesn't help anything. But anyway, he was a genius. Look, I was